The world didn't give you a personality. It gave you a mask, and then it told you the mask was you. Think about the last time you felt fake. Not tired, not stressed. Fake. Like you were performing a version of yourself that you didn't choose. That feeling, that ache in your chest when you smile at the wrong joke, agree with the wrong person, become whoever the room needs you to be. That feeling is not a flaw. It's a signal. And most people spend their whole lives ignoring it. But you catch yourself performing a version of you that you never chose, and it drains you by 3 p.m. every single day. That's not a character flaw. That's a neural alarm going off in your skull. And here's what nobody tells you. There's a psychologist who named this exact problem. He built his entire career on it. And he found a way to measure it, objectively, on paper, before you even say a word. His name is Carl Rogers, and the sign he discovered will tell you whether you're already becoming your true self or slowly handing your life to the mask. Carl Rogers built a card test that measures your real self against your fake one. He called the gap incongruence, and scientists have since found the exact brain circuit behind it, a region that fires error signals every time you fake it. In the next minutes, you're going to learn the 3-step method that shuts that alarm off for good. One sentence, because it matters. He was one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, the founder of humanistic psychology. Carl Rogers didn't start out wanting to understand the human mind. He entered the University of Wisconsin to study agriculture. Then he switched to religion, began questioning everything he'd been taught to believe. He left theology and turned to psychology because it was the one place where he could ask life's biggest questions without subscribing to someone else's rigid doctrine. That personal path mirrors the theory he would spend his life building. He was the man who argued that you're not a problem to be fixed, but a person to be understood, which led him to set out to do something that sounds impossible. He set out to measure the self. His own break from imposed structures didn't happen by accident. It offered a preview of what he would later teach millions of people. The container you were forced into isn't the shape you were meant to grow in, which means the first step toward becoming real is recognizing where the container ends and you begin. He walked away from every field that demanded he become someone else's version of right, and he built a new field that asked who you actually are. That's the energy behind everything you're about to learn. But here's the core of his whole theory. You don't have one self, you have two. The first is what Rogers called the organism. That's the real you, your natural values and your genuine needs. It represents the person you were before the world told you who to be. Rogers believed this self was fundamentally good. Nothing about it was broken or selfish. This self carried an inborn direction toward growth, connection, and creativity. The second is your self-concept. That's the picture of yourself that you carry around. And this is the painful part. The self-concept isn't built by you, it's built for you. By your parents, your teachers, and every person who ever approved of you or withheld approval until you changed. Here's the image I want you to hold. Your true self is a living plant. It has a shape, its own way of growing. Your self-concept is the pot the world forced it into. To make it fit, the world trimmed the roots, cut what stuck out, and bent what didn't conform. Then it stood back and said, "See, this is who you are." When you feel like you're not yourself, that's not confusion. That shows your real self pressing against the pot, and the pot pressing back. Neuroscience has since found where this pot lives in your brain. It lives in the default mode network. The D, think of it as your brain's background app, the one that never closes. When you have nothing specific to focus on, the DN activates automatically. It runs through the past, simulates the future, and searches for problems to solve. In people who feel chronically fake, this network runs a self-concept program that was installed by other people, not by you. A 2023 study in the Journal of Neuroscience showed that the brain doesn't hold a fixed self-concept. Instead, it updates self-views through interconnected neural networks. Every piece of social feedback you receive physically reshapes how you see yourself. Your self-concept isn't a photograph. It's a living pattern of neural connections that rewires itself based on what the world reflects back to you. So let's look at where the mask actually comes from. Rogers had a name for it. He called it conditional positive regard. Let me translate that, because it's the whole game. As children, we learn a devastating equation. Love isn't given freely. It's given on conditions. Parents say things like, "I love you when you're quiet," or "I'm proud of you when you succeed," or "I accept you when you behave." The approval always carried a price tag. Here's the trap. You don't just hear those conditions once. You internalize them. They stop being your parents' voice and become your own inner voice. The voice that tells you exactly who you're allowed to be and who you're not. That voice is the mask. It's not the thing you are, but the role you were taught to play. Research on attachment in the developing right brain shows that the infant brain wires safety directly to performance. When love is conditional, the child's nervous system learns that survival depends on fitting the mold. Those early relational experiences physically shape neural architecture in the right hemisphere. The mask isn't just a psychological habit. It forms a neurobiological survival pattern that was installed before you knew what a choice was. SCORE's work demonstrates that secure attachment relationships support healthy right brain development, while conditional or insecure attachment disrupts the same systems. The mask didn't come from a choice you made in adulthood. It formed as neural architecture while you were still learning what love looked like. Your true self never died. It never grew weak. People simply overlooked it because the reward, the approval, the safety, and the belonging were always attached to the fake version. You kept performing not because you're dishonest, but because you're smart. You figured out the rules of the world early, and you played them to survive. That's not a flaw. That's a survival strategy that ran out of purpose. That inner voice doesn't announce itself as a foreign program. That voice sounds like your own thoughts. It tells you to shrink, to agree, to become whoever the room needs you to be. And every time you obey it, the mask gets heavier and the real self gets quieter. But it never disappeared. The real self simply buried itself under layers of learned behavior that kept you safe. Now let's look at the sign, the thing Rogers could actually measure. He called it incongruence. In plain English, incongruence is the distance between your real self and your self-concept. It's the gap between who you are and who you've been trained to appear as. Think about the last time you felt fake, not just tired or stressed, but fake. Like you were performing a version of yourself that you didn't choose. That feeling, that ache in your chest when you smile at the wrong joke or agree with the wrong person, isn't a flaw. It's a signal. And this gap isn't abstract. It has symptoms. You feel anxiety and a dull emptiness you can't name. That chronic feeling of not knowing who you are lives in your chest. You feel it as constant overthinking about identity, the exhausting loop of deciding whether to be the serious one, the funny one, or the quiet one in every room you enter. That doesn't signal a weak mind. It is your organism pushing back against a container that never fit. But here's what makes Rogers different from every self-help guru who came after him. He didn't just describe the problem. He could themselves into two piles, who I am and who I should be. Then he measured the distance between the two lists. The bigger the gap, the more anxiety and stress the person showed. It appeared on paper, measurable and real. Rogers didn't describe your suffering, he measured it. It's not in your head, and it's not imaginary. It marks a genuine distance between two versions of you, and distance can be closed. Modern neuroscience has since found the circuit that creates that distance. Scientists call it the anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC. This brain region drives prediction error signals. It constantly detects mismatches between what you predicted would happen and what is actually happening. When your performed self is the prediction and your real self is the reality, the ACC fires continuous low-grade alarm. A 2024 study in Nature Communications identified the specific neural signal that drives this cognitive update. When expectations are violated, the ACC fires. When the violation is your own identity, that signal doesn't stop. It becomes chronic. It turns into the background noise of a life spent performing. That is the physical source of the anxiety, the neural basis of the emptiness, and the brain circuit behind incongruence. Rogers gave the gap a name. Neuroscience gave it an address. That means it can be rewired. So how do you close the gap? This is where Rogers gives us the answer. And it's the opposite of everything the world teaches. The world tells you, become more, achieve more, earn your worth. Rogers said the opposite. He called it unconditional positive regard. And this is not soft, fluffy positivity. This is the most radical idea in his entire theory. Here's what it actually means. Your worth does not depend on your performance. It never did. It was never conditional. You were just told it was, so you built a life around earning it. Now, this does not mean you are always right. It doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. It simply means your value isn't on the line in every interaction. You don't have to prove yourself to be allowed to exist, but knowing the circuit doesn't rewire it. The brain doesn't change from information. It changes. Separate the voices. When you feel that pull to perform, ask yourself, which part of this is my condition, the rule I learned to get love, and Rogers showed that incongruence produces chronic stress. So ask honestly, what does it cost me to keep playing this role? Not in money, in energy, in sleep, in the quiet hours where you feel like a stranger to yourself. If the price is your peace, the role is too expensive. Third, act on your organism once a day. One small, real decision that runs against a condition. Not rebellion, not proving a point. Just a choice made from your genuine value. I don't want this, so I won't. Made quietly, without needing anyone's permission. The conditions don't vanish overnight. But every time you act on the real self, the pot gets bigger, and the roots start to remember their original shape. Cold, the person who hurts people and calls it honesty. This is the single biggest misunderstanding about Rogers. Let me kill it now. Rogers did not believe the true relationships. That doesn't come from my spin on him. That's his core claim. The real self wants more for people, not less. It just refuses to perform for them anymore. Neuroscience supports this. The default mode network doesn't operate in isolation. It's deeply interconnected with social cognition networks. The so-called real self isn't a solitary impulse. It represents a socially connected neural pattern that naturally orients toward relationship and belonging. Your brain carries wiring for both authenticity and connection. Those aren't opposing forces, they're the same signal. But knowing this intellectually is one thing, seeing it happen is another. In 1965, a company filmed a therapy session called 3 Approaches to Psychotherapy. A woman named Gloria came in defensive, expecting judgment. Rogers offered unconditional positive regard, no agenda, no conditions, no attempt to fix her. Her defensiveness dropped within minutes. Gloria later described it as the first time someone saw her without trying to change her. She never became selfish. Instead, she became real. That shows what happens when the mask comes off and the organism is finally seen. So let's bring it together. The whole theory in 3 lines. 1. Your pain comes from incongruence. It doesn't signal weakness, but your true self pressing against a pot. It. 3. Congruence is not egoism,